Kilimanjaro, 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 mlima mrefu sana. Mawenzi, na mawenzi, na mawenzi, na mawenzi, mlima mrefu sana.
Before confronting our challenge, we first have to get there. Kilimanjaro is a mountain just 4 degrees south of the equator in the country of Tanzania, right on its northern border with Kenya. As mountains go, Kilimanjaro at 19,341 feet, the highest on the African continent, is not only an extremely high category mountain, but also an extremely beautiful one. Unlike Everest, that is located in the crumpled terrain of the Himalayas, Kilimanjaro stands proudly alone on the plains of Africa. There are 6 main trails, or routes, up the mountain. Most climbing companies, guides and tour operators will tell you that the Machame route is the most enjoyable and the most scenic. It is also reckoned to be much harder than the more well-trodden Marangu route, hence known colloquially as the whiskey route when compared with Marangu's Coca-Cola route. No hut bookings are necessary with the Machame route because everyone overnights in tents. The trail passes through the mountain's finest features, beginning in the west and descending quickly to altitude, first passing through the cloud rainforests and Shira Plateau in the first 2 days. The trail altitude then remains fairly constant as it traverses west to east across and just below the face of the cone to base camp on day 5. This west-east walk places the hiker daily within a spectacle of the amphitheatre of Kilimanjaro's cone, close up, showing off many of Kilimanjaro's timeless and patterned glaciers. So the hike finally gets underway from Machame Gate on day 1. After a 4,000-foot altitude gain and a 10.5 kilometre climb through the steep rainforest, we arrive at Machame Hut, where we sign the register and where we make camp for the night.
Kilimanjaro, Kilimanjaro, Kilimanjaro,
We begin our day 2 trekking from Machame camp towards the Shira Plateau. Still well west of our goal, it's a short but strenuous and dusty leg of our trek amongst skinny, naked, giant heathers. On ascent, now just passing through 10,000 feet, we arrive at a rocky outcrop for our first rest stop, with a lot of our overnight Machame campers still batched together.
And Johnnie, of course, is inside.
It's a couple of days worth in there.
How many days?
I took a bit of a video of it, but I wouldn't want to be squatting there. Although I suppose not too bad, it didn't really stink that much. Good, clean, rich, earthy smell.
No, it was, quite wholesome.
We're looking at some fearless birds here, what looks like crows on steroids.
They're just fat and massive and huge bigs, bigger than parrots.
So here we are at Shira Camp at 12,600 feet, at about 2 in the afternoon of our second day on the mountain. And at this altitude you can see how much more barren and dusty the landscape is up here, with a temperature well below 10 degrees centigrade.
Kilimanjaro, Kilimanjaro, Kilimanjaro.
Our trek today will total 10 kilometers as we walk nearly due east towards the cone of Kilimanjaro. On the way, we will trek to Lava Tower at nearly 15,000 feet before losing most of that gain by descending again for our overnight at Barranco Camp. But doesn't Shira Camp look stunning in the morning, surrounded by these wonderful views to the west? Yesterday it was Shira Camp in the clouds, dismal and cold. Now, with the sun rapidly warming the earth, we're keen to start trekking once again. We begin with a gentle but steady ascent towards the slopes of Kilimanjaro's main cone, Kibo. If you look carefully, you can see other hikers in the saddle up ahead, which we'll be following soon on our way to Lava Tower.
This is Lava Tower.
Got a bit of a headache. I know I'm going to sleep pretty well tonight. But from here it is downhill all the way into the somewhat eerie but beautiful Barranco Valley. After a heavy day and with still a raging headache, it's an early night. But unbeknown to me, that would thankfully be my last headache on the mountain.
Kilimanjaro, Kilimanjaro, Kilimanjaro.
Day 4 on the mountain And the toughest part of the day occurs right from the start, up the Great Barranco Wall. Today's walk overall is only 5 kilometers to Karanga Camp, with an expected arrival time of around midday. As usual, our day begins with a clear blue sky well above the clouds, with the ubiquitous mauve-coloured layer of dust and smoke above the distant plains to the south. It is hard not to be affected by the sight of the Barranco Wall. It's also called the Breakfast Wall, as many people lose their breakfast while climbing it.
In fact, all of this altitude that we've climbed today, we will lose again as we hike down back to the same altitude as last night. Crying shame, isn't it?
At noon, we arrive in Karanga Camp, 300 feet above the Karanga Valley.
Kilimanjaro, 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 Kilimanjaro.
It is only a 3.5 kilometer hike today, but we will ascend over 2,000 feet in altitude to Barafu Camp by midday.
Making some breakfast in the sun. It's a beautiful day. Woo! I could look at that from this vantage point all day long. But Johnnie was the first to let me know in the night that all the cloud had cleared, because he's the only one amongst the two of us that go out for a pee at night. I just pee in my bed. He loves the porridge, just loves the porridge.
We set off, but it isn't too long when the beauty of the mountain and blue sky is replaced by a misty, blighted landscape of loose, slippery shale. The word Barafu simply means ice in Swahili, and Barafu Camp certainly lives up to its name. Our icy base camp for our attempt on the summit later on tonight. We have seen some strange human behavior on our climb so far. Those who spend all of their 10-minute rest stop vomiting, or those who wet their pants or cry for no apparent reason. A swarm of thoughts permeate my brain. I feel content, happy, excited, but I'm looking so forward to my siesta this afternoon with the sound of scattering ice pellets off the roof of our tent.
Kilimanjaro, 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 Kilimanjaro.
A turn in a westerly direction for another 45 minutes will take us to the highest point on the African continent, Uhuru Peak. But what goes up must come down, and that includes ourselves. One of the reasons for departing for the summit at midnight is so that there is sufficient daylight left for us to descend again to Barafu Camp for lunch and a short rest, but also to continue descending to Moika Camp at an altitude of just above 10,000 feet. The last kilometer to the highest point in Africa. We draw inspiration from the sun making its first appearance directly behind us.
How are you doing? Well done yourself.
Ignoring our tired bodies and the intense cold, there's much excitement when we arrive at Africa's highest point. In turn, we await our opportunity for a photo session at the official signpost at the summit.
Come on, Phill.
There is nothing to gauge the sheer magnitude of the surrounding glaciers. No man-made or other familiar objects on the summit by which to compare their size. My best guess is that they are at least the height of a 3-story building. The rocks and gravel all around is charcoal black with a crunchy texture under our boots. There is no wind this early in the morning. This moment is surreal, like walking on the moon. I'm totally in awe and totally speechless.
Okay.
Come on, Phill.
Kuche, kuche.
Kuche.